Hello, 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 and welcome in this new episode. And today we have Foiana with us, and I'm so excited because I just know she has a beautiful soul and a great energy, and I can feel something good is going to come from this episode, and I cannot wait for us to dive into it. And I'm going to start by asking you, Foiana, to introduce yourself so that we can know a little bit more about what you do, who you are, where you live, all of that.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Foiana Kimball. As far as where I live in an RV with my family. We're traveling the US right now, my family of 5. And how would I describe myself? I am a spiritual person, timeline therapy practitioner, Akashic records practitioner, and lover of all things woo-woo and magical and spiritual. And above and beyond that, I'm also a mother to 3 and a wife to my wonderful husband. And so excited to be here today with you. I'm so glad that you reached out and offered me the opportunity, because I too agree that I think it's going to be some amazing magical stuff that comes through today. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, me too. And I would like to ask you also, what is being spiritual for you? What does it mean? I know it's a tough question, but
yeah, I love this question actually, and I sat with it for many years of my life actually, and kind of played with what is that idea, or what is the aspect of being spiritual. And I think ultimately, while I feel there is a connection to this higher source that is involved, I feel like it's also deeply connecting within with yourself, and kind of finding what works for you, what speaks to you, and then, taking those steps in your life to continue to connect not only with that higher energy source, but also more with yourself. And I feel like there's also an aspect of spirituality too that plays into nature and this earth plane. And I think that gets neglected a lot. There's this outward, upward focus. I feel there's an importance to this inward, downward feeling as well that gets left out, where if we connected more to nature and connected more to that spiritual nature of the earthly plane, there's a lot to be learned there, and a lot to be said about how nature moves and how nature speaks and how it all works together and integrates in a certain way. And so for me, spirituality is kind of drawing in that upward force and that downward motion, and like pulling it all together into the center, and then moving from that space.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And when you started talking, I was like, and once you're starting to becoming spiritual and make that a part of your kind of identity, you cannot go back. I mean, I don't think you can, unless something big happens and you start shifting into false light, or but it's still a spirituality in its way. It's just you change your perspective.
I totally agree. That once you start to notice and see things in a certain light, it's hard to deny that it exists there. For sure. There's definitely something about that.
It becomes such a big part of our daily lives and what we do and who we are, that it's an integral part of us. And what made you dive into spirituality? What triggered this dive in, or this awakening of yours?
So this is a little bit of a longer story when it comes to mine. So going way back to childhood, actually, I spoke to, well, I guess back then they would refer to it as imaginary friends, right? I had a lot of imaginary friends, and a creative imagination. That's what everybody likes to brush it off as. But I spoke to other beings, I saw other beings, I talked to animals, and I was kind of like the weird child that did strange things, right? And so as that continued throughout my life, my mother married a pastor of a church, and so that was an interesting turn of events for me, because I was being raised in a very strict religious household. And I loved that dynamic of it still, because I feel like there is aspects of religion that are so important to spirituality, but I feel like it gets interpreted wrong in a lot of ways as well. And so as a child, I was always questioning, but why would that happen? Or why would God do that? Or what? And like, that was always shut down, right? Because I had all of these questions. It just didn't make sense to me, because I saw the world differently. Like, I just saw the love and the magical things about it. And I didn't understand why there would be like these harsher punishments and like rules and all of these things that just didn't feel right with me. So as I got older, I continued to go to church, because that's what we did, and continued to kind of listen to these sermons, and it just didn't sit right with me. In fact, as I got older, I stopped going to my stepfather's church because it just didn't resonate with me, and that caused a bit of waves too. But I just was like, I can't sit through this. And so around, I want to say I was like 16 or 17, I started to kind of like branch out on my own to find things. And at that time, the internet wasn't like such a big deal yet. Now I'm really aging myself. But we didn't have, like, you could Google stuff, but it would take forever, and there wasn't a whole lot of information sitting out there just yet. And so I was going to bookstores and libraries and kind of finding books on astrology and finding books on different aspects of spirituality. And I bought myself a tarot deck, and like, I was really kind of flowing into that. And then there was this guilt though that came in again from the religious side, that like these things are evil and these things aren't right. And so I kind of pushed it away again. Moving forward into college time, I became a massage therapist, and I feel like that was my first real like exposure to the spiritual world, which was not what I expected going into massage therapy, but I was blessed with like the most amazing teacher. And that is where I bought my first book on chakras and the mind, body, soul connection, and all of these different books, and started reading into it and learning about Kundalini yoga and things along those lines, and was intrigued, but I still didn't like really take that leap into it. And so I would say like the biggest transition for my spirituality wasn't until recent years in adulthood, when I lost my father, I lost my great uncle, who was a big role in my life, and my father-in-law. They all passed away with like in a time period of about 2 years. It was just like one after the other. And during that time frame, I started to like really ask myself, well, what is this life about? Like, why are we here? What are we doing? I've always been fascinated with like, where do we go? And what's on the other side? That's always been something that's been big for me. But especially during that time period, I was asking myself a lot of questions. And with my father in particular, there was a lot of wounding and a lot of trauma and limiting beliefs and stuff that came along with childhood, a lot of inner child wounding stuff that had to be dealt with after he passed away. There was just a lot of stuff that surfaced. And I actually talk about it that there was a part of me that was really sad to lose him, but there was a part of myself that was freed when he passed away too. There was like this aspect of these like pressures and these ideas of what our relationship was supposed to be, and all of these things that I felt freed all of a sudden, and was like, I don't have to be those things. I don't have to be those labels. I don't have to carry those burdens with me anymore. And so from the time that he passed, I really started to call into question a lot of things. And then fast forward to 2020 and we got locked down, right?
Yeah.
And that at that point in time, I had to sit with myself. There was nowhere to go. And so I kind of like to think of 2020 was for me in certain aspects, because I felt like it was, God, spirit, source, however you want to refer to him. I'll probably say God a lot because I was brought up in a religious home.
Yeah, of course.
But I say it very freely, as in I see it more as just the aspect of God in the religious aspect, if that makes sense. So source, spirit. I feel like they were like, sit down, you're going to figure this out. There's no more running from all of this. Now you're contained in this little space. And I had my third child, my youngest daughter, in 2020.
Okay.
And so that was very confronting for me with everything that was going on. Had my youngest, and at that point, I hit like the lowest point I had ever felt in my life. Like it's hard to even describe it, how low it went, because I've never experienced anything like that before. But I now understand where people go when they talk about depression and postpartum depression and all of those things. It was just the lowest point in my life. I was like, what's even the point of being here? Why are we even doing this? Like, I was having a really tough time through that. And especially because being locked down, I'm alone, I'm a new mom again. I had all of these things going on. And so at that point, there was this huge process. Like, if I were to say an awakening happened, it would be through that time frame, because it was like I started to see things differently. I got tired of my own issues, really, and started to see like where I was the cause of a lot of my misery or problems or, frustrations. And so that, I think, coupled with it kind of, I don't know that there was like a specific awakening for me. It's just always been this like natural trajectory. It started when I was a child, and it's just kind of climbed and climbed and climbed. But that moment definitely was a big eye opener of like, what am I doing with my life? Am I actually doing the things that I want to do? Am I actually pursuing the things that make me happy? Am I actually free? Do I feel free? There was all of these questions that came into play. And so I feel like 2020 was like a huge pivoting point for me in my spirituality, where I was like, okay, I'm going to get really serious about this. I'm going to start spending more time meditating, journaling, looking into more of the things that I enjoy, researching about energy centers and healing myself and cleaning up my act. So I think that that's kind of where the biggest bloom happened, was at that point in time.
And did you start taking courses, or did Reiki or something at that point, or just kept in books and internet?
As a matter of fact, I actually did see a Reiki practitioner for the first time in 2019. And actually, 2018. So I went to her and started doing some Reiki healing, because I had really, at that point, gotten kind of tired of the same old routines and nothing was working. And I just was feeling frustrated. And so I went to this Reiki practitioner, and from that point, I started to notice small changes happening for me. It opened something, it unlocked something for me going to her. And so I was seeing her monthly, just to go in and, if anything, I was like, this is really relaxing. It feels so good, And so I was going in to just have that experience and kind of relax and have something for myself, because up until that point, I came from this very like sacrificial space, I guess, of like, I would sacrifice everything of mine and my time and my space and what I wanted to do for other people. I would do it for my husband and my son and my family members and my job, and everything else kind of took precedence over what I wanted. And so at that point, I started to restructure my life a little bit. It was after my dad had passed, and I started to go into other things. And shortly after that, I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter, my middle child, my middle daughter. And so from there, from her being born especially, I just felt this responsibility, this deeper responsibility to like do more, be more, but from a spiritual standpoint. And so the first class that I signed up to was actually with Gregoria.
Okay.
And she is the most beautiful mentor. I don't want to say her last name wrong, so I'm not going to butcher it. But
Okay. I'll mention it in the notes.
Yes, you know who she is.
Yeah.
The most beautiful soul. I stumbled across her on the internet by chance, which obviously nothing is by chance, but it was random to find her. We didn't have any connections between us. And she was offering her illumination course. Okay. And I just felt this call and this pull to do it. I ignored it for her first session and was like, and then it was like in my face, right? All this illumination stuff was popping back up again. And so the second time around, I messaged her. I said, actually, she messaged me, I have to say. She goes, I know that you're going to sign up for this. I can feel it. And so do you want to chat? And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally like the day before had decided I'm going to do this class. And she messaged me. And so I went forward with illumination. And from that point forward, it feels like it just was like this fast forward motion into everything else. Illumination was such a big step for me. It wasn't, the way that I describe it is, it wasn't like she was teaching me anything new, even though she was in this, like it felt familiar. It felt like I was coming home to things I already knew how to do. And so it was really exciting because I was seeing myself for the first time in that space. And just like the channeling and the information, and I could not get enough of that. I was like more. And, then started diving into it outside of there. And it's just kind of
just for
from there.
Yeah, just for context, illumination is a container of G. It's like 3 months of a small intimate group, and you'll learn all about spirituality, basically.
Yes.
I have not taken yet, but
it's a treat. I tell people, I know she's only doing one more session of it, I think next year. And if it calls on your heart, do it. Because here, I'm going to promote G for a second. Oh my God, that class, it was everything for me. And I did go on to do her level 2, which she's now combining the two of them. But it was just such a special experience. I can't even explain it. Soul family ties came in. I've connected with so many more people since then. It just, like, I really felt like it broke me open in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And it was like every part of me, as I moved through it, even outside of that container, the things that I was coming across, the books I was picking up, it was like, yes, this is me. Yes, this is me. Like, I finally felt like, not only, like, I didn't need somebody else to get me or understand me. I was finally understanding myself. I was like, this makes sense. This feels good, And I think that is such an important part of the spiritual journey, right? Because when I was in religious settings, it was always looking to someone outside of you to tell you what God is saying, to tell you that you're obeying, to tell you you're doing good things. And so when I stepped outside of that and stopped asking other people for permission or approval, and I started to do the things that I wanted to do, it was very empowering. It was a big deal for me because it wasn't something that I had really taken full ownership of before, where I just said, no, this is what I want to do and this is what I'm going to do, and then do it. And so it was a big turning point for me. That specific year, 2020, and then going into 2021 was a huge leap for me.
And I kind of lost what I meant to say. So I want to say that the difference between like religion, spirituality, and I want to say our spirituality, because I feel like it's close, is not it's not like responding to rules and living by rules. It's really using your discernment. And I know some new age way of spirituality are more like, I'm going to follow this person. It's my leader, and I believe everything that he or she says. And it's important to detach from that and go back within, basically, and choose. You get to choose what you believe in. If you say something about the way you see the world and I'm not okay with that, it doesn't feel right, it's okay. I can just pick one thing that I resonate with, and that's my way of seeing in the world and living in it. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It's like you said, freedom. You were looking for freedom, and I think that's at least the way I see and be in spirituality is all about freedom and viewing things through your own prism. I don't know if we say that like this in English.
Yes. But I love that. Yes, I think that's so important what you brought up, because there's this, we're always told what to do, right? And that has always felt icky to me. Like, you have to do this, and so, especially through childhood, and my childhood in particular, there was a lot of learning how to get attention through following rules, through getting, making achievements in school and all of those things. And so you kind of your brain gets trained to do those things. And then as an adult, right, it's like you go through college, and then you get married, and then and there's this like set of things of how it's supposed to be done through society, right? And with spirituality, it's kind of like, who makes these rules, right? Who's setting these rules? Like, what made that rule?
Why?
And why are we following them? I understand there's certain rules in place for safety and other things, but there's a lot of things that are, it's seen as so black and white, and I see all the colors in between. And I think that's where spirituality comes into play, right? You understand the duality, how the world works, right? And there's a difference between world and earth too. So the world is this mind construct, right? And we have this duality that exists there, this black and white that everybody sees. But there's this spectrum in between. And if we work with the earth, which is nature, right, and Mother Nature, then we see that we're existing in this world plane, but the earth plane has something completely different to offer. If we kind of take those dualities, we see them, how they exist, but then we play in the middle field between them. It's
very interesting. It's like the world is society 3D, and earth is more expansive and free. Very interesting. And when you think of this, I don't think I've used the word world a lot lately. I'm always saying earth, Gaia, and just world is for society and some bullshit stuff.
Yes, absolutely. It's like, I feel like that's where my problem, it's not a problem, but I'm going to label it as problem, has always been, is like, I exist in that earth plane. Like, I see things from that earth side of things, where that's where I feel more comfortable. I feel more comfortable in nature and with animals and moving with the cycles of time and all of these things, right, down on that earth plane. The world plane is difficult for me to integrate sometimes, because there's a lot of rules and structures, and people are offended with things, and like, there's just all of this stuff that kind of overcrowds the beauty of what can be if you just kind of let a lot of that mind stuff go. Of course, you always have to, we are here and functioning in that 3D world, and so you do have to learn how to integrate it. But I feel like, and I'm going to throw in a biblical term here, right? It's that whole like, be from this world but not of it, be from the world but not of it. I always think of that as like, be from the earth but not of the world. And I love that. I love how that integrates better for me, because I can vibe with earth, but I struggle with vibing with world sometimes. And I'd love to see earth influence the world. I'd love to see people kind of shift from this idea of being involved in this mind world, because it's all essentially we've created these constructs in our minds, right? And we move through these spaces based off of what we've been told or how we perceive things to be. But like, we can step back from that and just kind of move with nature and the way that nature moves instead. And I feel like if we returned to that, we would see such a shift in humanity too. If we returned to moving with the cycles and being, more in tune with the plants and the animals and nature, and just kind of taking that time to sit back and observe what's going on outside of us on that aspect of existence, we would realize how much we're functioning outside of how we're supposed to actually be.
Yeah. Did moving to the RV help you be more in tune or realize more of you wanting to be of Earth and move with its cycle, or was it already here?
Yeah, absolutely. That has played a big part for me. I've always loved nature. I grew up in a mountain town, a very small mountain town. I was always outside playing in the trees and nature and running around, and we had a lake. And so I was always outdoors as a kid. As an adult, I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, which is actually where I'm currently at as we're speaking. And it was weird for me because
it must
there
have
were
been
all
different.
of these like cookie cutter houses, and there's a city, and like, there's just people everywhere. And it was a bit of a culture shock for me because I did not grow up in such a concrete place. There's so much concrete and so much walls around everything, and so it just felt shocking a bit to my system to move into this space. And then it's also a desert, and to me, I was so used to green and like these lush green environments and water, and so to come to a desert, I feel like that was also a lesson for me to learn that beauty can even be found in like these dry, barren places as well. But my backyard always has had trees and fruit trees and grass, and because I can't go without nature. However, when we decided to move into the RV and sell off most of what we owned, the rest of it went into a storage unit. We downsized from a 3,300 square foot house all the way down to 429 square feet in an RV with 5 of us. It allowed me to let go of all of these responsibilities of having to keep that clean, having to run errands all the time, having to be at all of these appointments. Like, I feel like it wasn't just changing my space, my environment, as much as it was just completely overhauling my life. I got really tired of that like fast-paced lifestyle. And it's not that that type of work doesn't exist living in an RV, but I felt like I freed myself of a lot of obligation and responsibility to things that weren't really feeding my soul in the first place. And because I lifted a lot of that stuff, took all those burdens off of myself, I suddenly had all this free time that I was like, I wasn't aware that I had, because before I was always like, I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to go outside and sit in the sun. Because there was all of these other obligations that came with owning a house, right? There's constant maintenance, but you also have to work to pay for all of the things. And so letting that go and moving into this home, I find that I get to sit outside more. I get to go play with my kids more. I get to adventure more and just have more of that quiet space. You would think being in a smaller space with family that you wouldn't have that, but I've found it that way. And if you had asked me like 5 years ago if I was going to live in an RV, I probably would have laughed and said, "You're crazy," especially with all of these children and a dog and in a small space. And now looking back on me just like a year ago, because it's been a year now that I've lived in this RV. I look back at her and I'm like, she was brave. Like, she did a thing and it was cool. She just made this decision and was like, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to accomplish it. And she did it. And so I'm like proud that I was able to see the opportunity and move into that space where normally I probably would have sat back and had some fear around it. And so in having that ability to sit in nature more and observe nature more and just, look out my window and have new scenery every day and drive, for hours at a time through open fields or forests or trees. There's just so much to be observed and so much to see when you uncrowd your mind from all of those other things and just be with nature. And so like I crave it. I crave more time in nature and more time with myself and having that time to listen to my own voice. And I mean, I also channel, so there's a lot of other voices to listen to as well when you're out in nature. But yeah, it's been special. I would not have traded this opportunity for the world. I would have done it again, hands down.
And I'm really into tiny living and tiny houses. And from all the channels and videos I've seen, a lot of people say that it gives them more time and more presence with their family and nature. And it's a beautiful thing, I think.
It is. And, I know eventually in our future at some point, there will probably be a house that, but even like, it's not something that I crave or want, or like I think about it, but it's kind of like in the background still. There's other things that are more important at the front line right now. And, I still have friends and family that say, whoa, why would you do that? Are you okay? Did something happen? Are you guys struggling? Like, there's all these questions that come up because a lot of people can't fathom this idea of like letting go of things. And I feel like that is another aspect of spirituality, right? Through spirituality and through that journey, you learn to let go and like good in the letting go too. And that non-attachment, this idea of non-attachment, right? And I know some people kind of are like, well, that, non-attachment, that seems a little heartless, but it's not. It actually, there's a lot of heart in letting go too, because it's me allowing myself to move in the way that I want to move, but it's also a gift to let go of someone else or other things and allow them to flow the way that they need to as well. And I had a friend years ago, she said, the one thing that I always have found so strange or difficult about you is like, you can just let go. Like, you just will cut people off. And I was, at first when I heard it back then, I was like, wow, that's a really harsh aspect of myself. And like, why do I do that? And I kind of sat with it longer, but now I see it as a blessing. And it's not cutting people off. It's just allowing what is, when the relationships come, I enjoy them when they're there. And I don't have these expectations that they're going to last a certain amount of time or that there's going to be certain things that happen. I also hold things very loosely when it comes to the material plane because I feel like, for one, they're not that important to me, which people kind of find in our world version, right? It's very shocking to not have that attachment to a lot of material things, but I enjoy them. I love them. My Taurus moon loves the material plane and sensual stuff and all of that. But I'm not attached to the idea that I have to have them. And I know that I can't take it with me when I leave here. And so the things that I want to take with me are these experiences. Like, I want to grow my soul. I want to grow my memories. I want to grow these relationships that I have. I want to connect with my soul family and connect with other people and learn from other people and experience other cultures and taste all the food and see all the sights, because those are things that my soul will carry into the next lifetime. Those are things I can carry forward, is those experiences and the soul growth. I can't carry forward things. So I think that
That's
there's just
beautiful.
this beauty in releasing things and carrying forward more than just what you're holding physically in your hands.
And were you always able to let go of things, or did anything help you realize that and actually apply it to your life?
I would say no, I wasn't always easily able to let go of things. It was that this idea, right? Again, it falls back on parenting and society and everything, that like you have to have certain things or certain achievements or certain milestone markers to be progressing as a person, right? To know that you've reached this level of success is to have certain things. And let me tell you, my life played out exactly that way. Like, I went to college, I followed all the rules all through high school, got, got engaged, got married, had the kid, bought the house. Like, everything was cookie cutter the way that society tells you, but like something was still missing for me. Because did I have a hard time letting go of those things? I think it was more like this idea of having a hard time of letting go of the ideas of how I was supposed to behave or perform to be accepted, because none of it actually mattered to me. And that's what I know now, looking back. And that's why I wasn't happy then, was none of those things actually mattered. I didn't care. But it was like, look, I bought the house. Didn't I do a good job? Look, I had the kid. Didn't I do a good job? Like, it was that kind of, I was searching for that love and that approval outside of myself through achieving certain things. And so I still looking, like, all through my life, I've never really been attached to the material things. Like again, my Taurus moon loves material. Like, I love luxury. I love going and getting a massage. I love a really good dinner. I love, having my comfy blanket or my beautiful books to read. I do. There's an aspect of me that loves that material plane of things. But with all of that being said, I also know that it's all temporary. That again, I'm not taking it with me when I leave here and move beyond into the next space. I can't carry cars or houses or any of those things with me. But I also understand that, and I don't know, maybe it does come along with being raised in a religion, is like this idea of everything kind of being temporary. Like, you could have it today and it could be taken away tomorrow. And so I try to approach every aspect of my life just appreciating what I have now, because who knows where I'll be tomorrow, who knows where it will be tomorrow. Any number of things can happen. 2020, the lockdowns was a perfect example. I felt very strongly that my freedom was taken from me at that time, which is not true, right? Because it's just this concept of freedom, because you can always be free no matter where you are. But I felt very strongly like my freedom was taken. I felt boxed inside of my house, right? It started to feel like a prison cell to me a bit. And at that time, it was sitting with the same idea that none of this stuff matters. Like, none of it matters. And all of these rules and all of these constructs. And so that was my search for, like, what freedom, how could I be free inside my body? How can I be free and still move through this world space? And so part of that freedom was still being able to release things and say, this kind of goes with that Marie Kondo thing, like, where she holds up things. Does this bring me joy or doesn't that? Right? And she gets rid of things. I started to see things in my house as like being weights holding me down. Like, all of these things became ways of tethering me to my space. And I was a slave to these things, right? Like, I had to work to make the money to maintain these things, to buy these things. And like at the end of the day, I was cleaning them and, you know, setting them on shelves and curating things and keeping everything clean. And so like I didn't want to be a slave to material things. It felt really icky at that point in my life. Like it really became like this visceral feeling to it of like, oh my God, it started to feel like the world was closing in on me a little bit, because I had started to really grasp onto things at that point, because that was like how you move up. That's how you show that you're successful in life, right? It's like, look at my beautiful house, and now I have people come over and we have parties. And I'm not knocking that at all, because again, that Taurus side of me loves beautiful spaces. I love gorgeous houses. Like, let me walk through all the gorgeous houses in the world. I love watching all of those, like, what are they called? Like DIY videos and Joanna Gaines. I'm like, God, I love her. But there's this aspect of it that just felt like an anchor to me. And I think it was just, I was being called forward to just really drop it all and then start to curate my life and start to see like, okay, now I'm going to build a foundation. This is where I'm going to start from within. And now I'm going to only bring the things that feel like they're serving something, that they have like a higher purpose, and that they all feel good and they're all there to like grow in a certain way with me. So like starting to bring in more books and crystals and things that felt like they were vibrating with me, right? Like they became just this natural like flow of my environment. So yeah, I don't think I ever really was attached to that material stuff when I think about it. That was a long explanation to say that, but
no, but it's good. It brings your perspective into it. And was it easy because you were married and had a family? Was it easy for you to do that transition to more of a minimalist lifestyle, or did you encounter some resistance?
It's interesting because the marriage aspect specifically, and with spirituality, with moving into the smaller space, we definitely went through a lot of karmic, toxic cycles for sure, leading up to this time frame. I feel blessed because my husband and I feel like we grow together, which doesn't happen all the time. Especially when you start to go through these things, there can be like this big gap of separation that happens. And he and I would agree if you ask. He's not as far along as I am spiritually, but he's open and willing to listen, and he's growing at his own pace. He's going through his own spiritual journey. And so we're able to support each other in that. And I feel like that was the aspect that made it easier to transition into this space. Was we both talked about it. And when he was shocked when I said, well, let's just move into an RV because his job allows him to travel. He can go to other states, other cities to work. And he was going to travel outside of where we were living to go to work. And I didn't like the idea of our family being separated for so long. So I said, well, let's just move into an RV. We'll go with you. And he was shocked that I said that. He's like, you would do that? And I said, yeah, why not? And so with having children too, that was a tougher decision because I wanted to make sure that they were still safe. They still were being provided for, that we were still having access to certain needs, especially my my middle daughter, she has a peanut tree nut allergy. And so I had to make sure that, we had access to medical care if it was needed, or food sources, because food changes when you move to different places. And so there was the concern there. But I feel like it was the best choice that was made for our whole family. My husband was on board. My son, who is older, he's 12, almost 13. He was on board. He was like, okay, let's go, and then my two little ones, they don't really know the difference. They're 2 and 3. So they're just kind of along for the ride. But even they say, because we've been put for a little bit, we're renovating our RV to make it a little bit more long-term living friendly. And both the little ones are like, when are we going to the beach? When are we going to the forest? Can we go back to the river? And so they, even though they don't exactly understand the shifts and stuff, to them, that's normal now, right? To be at the ocean, to be in the forest, to be at rivers. And I love that. I love that their normal is just being out in nature, because we don't have a huge space to run around and play in. We don't have a fenced in backyard to run around outside. We have nature. That's where we go, right? We park our RV and we go outside and we play. So I think for them, it was a fairly easy transition. And I feel that it was easier in my particular case to transition with my partner, because we were on the same page with certain things. Whereas I could see us from like 10 years ago moving into an RV together probably would not have worked out so well. But us now, after we've worked through a lot of our BS, we definitely were on the same page to be able to handle that in a better, loving way, I think.
Yeah. Amazing. And I've been wanting to ask you that since earlier. And it's a question I always ask. And I think it's a good question. What would be the advice that you would give to your younger self at any period of your time?
Yeah. I would tell her, stop sacrificing yourself for other people, for sure. Yeah, that one hits emotionally. Like I can feel the tears welling, right? I would tell her, stop sacrificing yourself for other people. And that love that you're looking for outside of yourself, it's here.
I'm going to share a little bit, because I do energy scans, which is a channeling and healing session. And I gave myself one this morning, and I bawled my eyes out, because it came up. Just, being here for you and being your own anchor. And it's okay if sometimes you need someone to hold space for you and to show you can be safe. So yeah,
that's a big again, I keep going back to my birth chart because I'm big on astrology, but it's actually in my birth chart, right? This idea of safety. And like that's where my Chiron wound is, right? It's in this space of like not having these safe spaces in younger years, and like feeling like the rug's always pulled out from you, and not being able to depend on other people. And so through this journey, a lot of that has been finding that safety in my own body and realizing how unsafe I felt in my own body, and like always being in that fight or flight patterning, right? And I know there's a lot of talk around nervous system regulation right now, and I do think it's an important topic. But even beyond regulating your own nervous system, it's like regulating your environment and regulating the people that you allow into your space too. That if you feel unsafe and you're still calling in other people that make you feel unsafe and you're not establishing those boundaries, then it doesn't change. Like you have to be able to regulate that environment as well, not just within your own body, but outside of your body as well. And so, yeah, that's what I would tell her. I would just say, stop sacrificing, and, you love you. Find that love inside of you. Don't listen to those outside voices, those outside pressures to be something that you're not. And yeah, you are a little weird, but it's going to be really cool when you get older.
You'll meet older weird people.
It's weird to talk to angels and spirits when you're a little kid, but like when you get to be in your late 30s, the whole world's going to think it's kind of cool to talk to these people.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, don't let that drag you down, because you're gonna go from what made you weird to, like, now it's pretty cool to be able to do that and share that with other people. So
what made you weird is what makes you special today.
Yeah, exactly.
And would that be the advice that you would give someone going through a tough time or diving into spirituality?
Ooh, just take it slow. I think a lot of, with spirituality, a lot of people dive in too fast, and it becomes very overwhelming very quickly, because shadow work is no joke. Like, shadow work has knocked me on my butt a few times. It's tough. And so just take it slow, and you're not alone. There's a lot of other people going through these same experiences, these same growth spurts, these same realizations. And your community is out there. They're out there waiting for you, and they'll start to show up for you, and you start to show up for yourself. And so it's just a process. Like, even now, I feel like I'm still very much in the middle of that journey, and still, we'll always be walking that path and that journey. There's always room for growth. And so I think just having that mindset of just being in awe and being in love with the journey of it, like being able to just kind of step back and take in all the scenery of it and enjoy, again, like kind of using that nature reference, but like stare at the trees a little bit and enjoy all the leaves on the ground, and listen to the wind blowing. It's kind of that idea of, with your spiritual journey, do the same thing. Like, don't push yourself so hard that you don't love it, because there's so much to enjoy and so much to learn and so much to see through the slower process of it.
And it's important, because once we dive in, we realize that there is this whole new world here for us, all these things we didn't know about and we want to learn and know about, but maybe it's about the experience more than the learning, and we learn from the experiences, but we have time.
I think time. So I think it's that, it's kind of like life, right? If you rush to get to the end, you miss all those little things in between that were really important. And I think the same thing is to be said with your spiritual journey. If you're trying to rush to get to a certain space, you're missing the whole point of why you stepped out on that journey in the first place. And I'm still discovering different parts of myself. I'm still finding different aspects of my voice. I'm still working through what it is that I want or what it is that I like. But again, it kind of calls back in that idea of non-attachment. Like, don't be attached to the idea that your spiritual journey goes from point A to point B, right? There's all of this area to explore.
And sometimes you have to come back to point A to go to point C.
Yes. And even, there's all of these timelines and all of these possibilities that spread out, but they all kind of funnel back into this end point anyways. And so it's not about the destination of it. I guess this is kind of cliche, right? It's not about the destination, it's in the journey. But like, it's
Yep.
true. There's so much truth in that.
It's true.
Where don't be so set on, I have to be this way, or I have to get to this point, or even placing other people. This is something I've learned over time, is like this idea of placing people on pedestals, right? Like, well, they've been on their spiritual journey longer, and so they know more than me, or, you know, they have more experience, and like, let go of even those ideas, because spirituality, it's not like it's a one size fit all, but it's not just one road to get there.
Yeah.
And so someone else's journey may have taken them a lifetime, and other people could have some kind of, you know, awakening to it in the next year, and all of a sudden they're, you know, they have 100,000 followers on social media, and they're teaching to the masses. It's like, whatever your soul was set here to do, and set here to reach. Some people, it's funny, I had a reading with G. We did my yearly tarot spread reading. I love doing those with her. And she said something along the lines of, you know, some people are meant for like that larger, widespread, more, you know, on the surface, but they reach a lot of people. And then there's other people that like go really deep, but there's only a small group of people that they're meant for. And so I think that's a super important point to take in, as well as this idea of like, you don't have to reach or touch thousands of lives in order to spread your spirituality and spread your light and be this. You could just be you. You can just be you and be in your own space and move through your life the way that you do, and you will touch the people that you're meant to touch. You'll reach the people that you're meant to reach. And spirituality isn't like holding crystals and waving around sage sticks. And like, I think there is aspects of that that are fun, and I am on board with it too, but it's more than that. It's more than the social constructs of spirituality too. There are social constructs around it, and break outside of those. Like, don't be afraid to be innovative with what your spirituality is, because someone needs it. Someone out there needs your version of spirituality. That doesn't always fit the mold of what other people's version is.
Beautiful. And I really wanted to talk about two things with you. I wanted to talk about the Akashic and about timeline therapy. So would you want to talk about either or both?
Yeah,
like
let's do it.
Explain what the Akashic records are briefly, and what you're getting from them, perhaps.
Sure. So the Akashic records, it's like so many words and so little words to say about it at the same time, right? So the Akashic records, in the smallest aspect, it's like the information of all that is. It's the book of life, I guess, would be the easiest way to put it, where people would understand it, or like God's remembrance of everything. But it is the astral, I think of it as like an astral library, where you can go there to reference all the materials of everything that was, everything that is, and everything that will be. And I say it that way because time doesn't really exist there the way that we understand it, but for the sake of understanding, past, present, future understandings of everybody's souls are held there. And, you know, animals and environments and buildings and everything, there's reference to everything there that can be accessed. It's like this place of pre-thought forms, I guess. Like it exists there before it materializes here in a certain way, or it materialized here and there's information that exists there. It's very like it's structured outside of time, and the way that we understand space, but it's the information of all that is. I have been accessing the Akashic records for intentionally for about 2 years. I feel like I've always connected to the Akasha and the Akashic records, and I'm realizing that now. It's definitely been something, again, all through childhood, that I've just accessed it. Like, you just know certain things and hear certain things and understand certain things about people that, you know, when you express them, people would say, like, how did you know that? Or, you know, there were certain things I would say and would be like, no, you know, people get very triggered when I was a kid and would say certain things because I just knew things, and now I know where I knew those things from. But it's a special place, and I really love. I started connecting with the Akashic records and sought out a mentor and started doing classes and stuff to really have more of a structure to it, because I was kind of just free flowing on my own, but I wanted more structured learning, and I really only had the intention to access them for myself and use them in like a creative aspect, or just to be able to grow in my own ways. And through the process, there was like spirit like just pushed and said, nope, we're going to go ahead and start working with other people. And like people just started showing up. It was like, can you do a reading for me? Can you do a reading? I'm going to send my friend, and my friend's going to send this friend. And like, it just started to snowball for me. And I had to deal with a little bit of worthiness around it, because I feel that the Akashic records are so precious, and there's such a sensitivity to it when you're delivering people's soul stories to them, right? Like, when I open up someone else's records, I'm connecting to the stories of their soul, the stories of their being. And so delivering those messages to somebody, there's this responsibility I feel that comes with that. And so I started to be like, why me? No, pick somebody else. Like, have somebody else do these readings. This is not for me. Like, I want to sit in the background and just kind of do my own thing, right? But I was pushed into that, and I'm so glad I was, because reading for other people has been such a new, it's been like this new journey for me, this new aspect of growth for me, this new expansion. Because when you're delivering these messages for other people, a lot of times those messages can be pretty relevant for you as well. And so it's been amazing in that aspect. And I love just connecting with the other people, which is so funny, because I'm normally like more of that hermit person. Like, I love my books, and I love to sit in nature, and I love to journal. Like, I'm more of that kind of like stay off on my own. But there's this push to like work with other people, and this push to get out in front of other people, and you know, start utilizing these tools that I've been given to bless and gift to other people. And so the Akasha just holds a special place for me. The energy there is just, oh, it's incredible. It's so special. And connecting with other people and being able to understand like these levels of how other souls come in with like these individual stories, but the stories all connect too. It's just so incredible to sit in that space. So I'm excited to see where that goes further. I'm starting to learn how to do energetic healings through the Akashic records, which I'm really excited to expand into as well. But yeah, it's a special place to be in.
And it's really, I'm going to say, important to do that work, because it's an entryway of spirituality. Oh, I want to learn about my past lives. And all of a sudden you're in front of all these possibilities and all those things that are relevant to your life now, that can help you now. And it's like it all makes sense somehow. And I think it's very important and interesting to work with the Akashic records.
Yeah, It's so special.
And have you tuned into future in the Akashic records of someone, or it's more of a collective thing?
So recently I have touched
Okay.
into like future information, which was newer for me, because I'm still kind of on my own journey of learning in the
Yeah.
Akashic records as well. Yeah, it was really cool because there's this thing that happens, right? We say a prayer to access the records, and then that energy is channeled in through clairs. And so I'm prior to working in the records, I felt like I was more stronger with clairvoyance, clairaudience, and claircognizance,
Yeah.
right? Is that where you just know things? Within the records, my clairsentience has really come online, which has been, I've had an awareness of it before, like where you feel certain ways around certain environments. I definitely have that empathic side, but within the records specifically, like I really feel certain energies or certain, like, I don't, like it'll show up as like energy in my body, and then we'll visit that space, and then it will have more to say for somebody. And so moving through it recently, where I tapped in more to someone's future information, there was like these visceral reactions happening that I haven't experienced as strongly before. So that's been new for me. And it's where I kind of like feel like I sit outside of myself as that information is coming in. Like I feel like I'm witnessing and observing, even though I hear my voice and it's coming through.
Okay, yeah.
Like I'm kind of sitting over here, and the information is kind of just coming through as it is. And so when some of the future information, like very specific, like time frames or very specific information came through, even I kind of went, oh, okay. I had this moment of like, oh, was that right? Because especially with claircognizance, sometimes it can be hard to like decipher, is this coming from me or is this coming from outside of me? And so, and I mean, if you really want to get into it, it's all coming from inside of you. But yeah, there's like this moment of like, wait, did that come from me, or was that? And so it's been an interesting move through that, because I've always been more dependent on the clairaudience and the clairvoyant. Like I see things and I hear things. And so when it switches really deeply into like that knowing has been really interesting for me, because I'm like, whoa.
When you think about it, it's us relying on the sense we use in the world. Like we need to see and we need to hear to survive or to be aware of our surroundings. So yeah, I feel like when we start going into initiations and into deeper form of healings, sometimes it can go blank and you realize that's what you were relying on the most. And to me, it's kind of like we were missing the whole synergy of all the clairs working together. Because I think it's the same for you, because when I do energy scans, they are all working together.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's opened up this new awareness for me, where I'm actually able to say like, oh, that's this, where before it's like reinforcing this idea that like, yeah, you have always had claircognizance. Yeah, you have always had clairsentience, but you were ignoring it. Now you can't ignore it, because we're bringing them all together, and you're working with all of them in one space. So yeah, it's pretty overwhelming, but like in such a good way. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just this like, oh, the energy there. It's so beautiful. I really feel that if more people could connect to that space of energy, that we would have a lot more people that like feel that peace and that love and that joy that they're looking for. It sits in that space. What's amazing about it too is I am studying and have been studying Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, which I think is super relevant to all of this. And where the Akashic records sit is just directly above Malkuth. So Malkuth is the earth plane. It's where we currently are. There's these spheres on the Tree of Life, and they're energy spaces. And there's these paths that connect them, that we're able to work through to have deeper understandings of certain things. And so you have Malkuth that sits at the bottom, and right above that is Yesod. And Yesod is where the Akashic records sit. But those are only 2 of the 10 spheres. There's other spheres that go even higher than that, right? But it happens to sit in direct lineage with Keter, which is like the source, the all-knowing, and it comes directly down into that space and then down into Earth. So what blows my mind, right, is like we're accessing the Akasha, which is here, but there's spheres up above that, like multiple spheres up above that, and right here sits source. So like we're channeling source information, but like there's so much that exists above and beyond that, so much information, so much to tap into, that it just is mind-blowing that like it feels so good at this space. I can't imagine like going into these higher spaces, right, to learn more. So yeah, it's pretty cool, but they all kind of funnel into this space in Yesod where it's just before it materializes down into Earth. That's where we touch the astral realms. That's where the astral realms exist, where we're channeling from. Even if you don't tap into the Akashic records, when you channel, that's kind of the space that you're going into for the information, which is then coming from that higher source. And I'm saying higher because that's the way that our human brain can understand it. Like there's this way to lay it out as a hierarchy, but the tree exists in your body too. So that's a whole other discussion for another day, but I'd love that. The tree of life.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And what's a big takeaway that you got from the Akashic records lately?
The Akashic records, everything's a big takeaway. All of it feels so relevant and so soul touching. But recently I've been tapping into them myself for just trying to connect more with like my creative side and artistic side. And so I've been opening the records and just kind of leaving them open and writing. And I love it because, right, your higher self exists there too, right? And the higher information of your soul of all time and presence. And so the information that comes through, I can either ask for something for the collective, and some of that will come through, which I've been sharing on my Instagram, some of the collective messages that have come through. But for me personally, there's been a lot of growth in this idea that art can exist in all of these like different forms and how we understand it. You know, when I say art, people immediately see like painting or photography or certain ways, but like everything is creative, and like everything you do in life, if you cook a meal, you're creating something, right? If you're mothering children, if you are a mother of children or father of children, you're creating something. If you are building a business, you're creating something. If you're connecting
even when you
relationships,
you're creating, you're weaving something.
Yeah, so I guess that's the most relevant thing that's come through me recently, is this idea that creativity isn't just related to these ideas around art and around writing and around, you know, there's creativity is everything. It's everything you're doing is creating. And yeah, that's been a special kind of reframe for my brain, because I've always said like, oh, I'm not using my creativity. And it's like, well, of course you are. Everything's creativity. You're creating things all the time. You just aren't paying attention. So that's a special message, I think, for a lot of us, right? Because like you said, even our words are creating things, but we're just not paying attention as we're saying them all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And do you want to talk about timeline therapy? Because I feel it's really interesting. I love hearing those methods that helped a lot, and that I feel like it helps you so much that you got trained in it to help others. Yeah.
Yes. So with timeline therapy, it's a form of neurolinguistics programming. It kind of goes in conjunction with each other. It's a more advanced version of neurolinguistics programming. So in short, neurolinguistics programming is what to kind of put it in layman's terms and give people an idea, is a lot of the motivational speakers that you hear use neurolinguistics programming. It's a form of like very subtle hypnotic speech, and it's to bring your awareness into a new space of being, right? It's like when you go to those motivational speakers and they're like, say yes, right? And they're like getting you to cheer with them. That's reframing parts of your brain, right? To be like in that space of excitement about stepping into this new part of being. But they also use it to sell you things, right? Say yes. And then by the time you're leaving, you're saying yes to all of the things that they want to sell you. So it's this very subtle way of learning the language of your own mind. You learn the language of your own mind, and then you create cognitive and behavioral change to build more resourceful states of being. That's a good way to say it. So like, you're learning and unlearning the way that your brain functions, because it's like our mind actually speaks a little bit different language. And so if your mind is speaking one language, but your voice is speaking a different one, you're not going to materialize what you want in this lifetime, right? It's like, for example, you speak French, and if you were speaking to me in French and I'm sitting over here speaking in English, our conversations are not matching up. We're not understanding each other, right? And so it just goes round and round. We're not completing anything beneficial. But because you've switched your language to English to speak with me right now we're having a positive communication. We're having this flow happen where we're co-creating together in this space with this podcast, right? Yeah. And so it's the same idea with your mind, with you and your mind working together to co-create in your space. And so time therapy is an extension of this model, where you elicit your timeline in the space, but we go through your timeline to locate the specific root cause. We call it the gestalt cause of negative emotional states. I don't like to call emotions negative, because I think that they all serve, but there is a point where it becomes negative when you've attached stories or events to it. And then the emotion continues to build from that foundation, right? So when you were, let's just use an example. When a child is like 3 years old, they experience something where a toy was taken from them and they get angry about it, right? Everybody takes my thing becomes that story. So the next time something happens, they get angry again, but now that anger comes in and it attaches to that anchoring point. So now we're still reacting, everybody takes my thing, but we're bringing it into this new space. And then because that becomes a belief system, now we're going to carry it all the way through to adulthood, right? And so as an adult, now I feel like life is unfair. I don't get anything that I want. I can't ever have the things that I want to have because everybody else gets it, but I don't. Everybody else can have that, but I don't get that. And it's because we've done this with the emotion, right? And it's built up to this point. So with timeline therapy, we go back through the timeline and we address this event here. And we say, okay, what happened in this event? And what are the higher learnings and higher teachings we can learn from this event? And the amazing thing about timeline therapy is, as a practitioner, I never know what your root cause is unless you decide to disclose it or share it with me. I will never know what that event is. I'm just walking you through the process of seeing it, recognizing it, and releasing it. And so we identify that root cause, and then it's about what are the higher learnings, what are the higher teachings that are located there? How can we reframe this situation to see how it served you instead of took away from you? And once we've located it and we release that emotion that was held there because it's no longer serving for where we're at now, we release that emotion. When that emotion drops out, all of the other tethers drop out with it, right? And so then we move back across the timeline and we work through releasing anything else that might be tethered to that emotion. And so the result then is that, or the idea of it is that once you release these root cause emotions, now we've moved back into the driver's seat, because before that root cause emotion was driving, right? We allowed that to become the driver for everything else that occurred after that, even though we don't realize it. Most of it is buried in our subconscious. We're not aware of it anyway. But once we release that, now we're present. We're present. We're not reacting, we're responding. And so it's like less of a triggered emotional state. So we address 5 of the major emotions that tend to hold those triggers, and we do anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and hurt. So all of those get worked through in the process of timeline therapy. And by the time we have finished, you'll be able to move through a state of more desired behavior, of more desired being, right? Because nobody likes being triggered. Nobody likes carrying those emotions. And so it's about releasing those states of being and moving into the state of being that you choose, instead of having it determined for you from a space that you didn't determine prior. Because as a child, you don't have the understanding that you have now as an adult, right? So from there, it brings you to a place of more understanding and wholeness, and then you're able to respond in life. There's a lot less reactiveness, because right? We're reacting out what happened in the past. We're not actually behaving from a space of now. And so that's the whole idea behind timeline therapy, specifically within NLP, is to release those root cause emotions. But there's also work with limiting beliefs, especially if there's very heavily rooted limiting beliefs. Those will get worked through. And then also there's something else that I like to work with, which is parts integration. And it's a lot of like, oh, well, I would never do that, or I would never say that, you know, and having this reaction towards someone usually outside of yourself. There's like an emotion that's attached to someone else. It could even be another version of you, but essentially we like call forward that version of whoever you see when that emotion or that thought process comes into play, and then we bring it together to show you how that actually exists and is a part of you and serves you as well. So it's that idea, right, of it's kind of like shadow work, but it's playing with it in like a different realm, where it's not so like, let's go deep into it. We're saying like, okay, let's pull out what represents this part that you're not seeing is also part of you. And then let's bring those two things together and connect them together, so you understand how that is serving you, how that is still a part of you, but you're rejecting it and then you're projecting it onto somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the basis of timeline therapy. And then I've created my own coaching program intensive around it, so that it's not like a session by session. With a lot of other timeline practitioners, you'll see where you just do it per session, where you would work through each of the emotions. With mine, I kind of wanted to make it an integrative process. And so I created an 8-week container where we work through all of those things together. But then from that point, because I feel like that's kind of where it's like when you birth a child and they hand you a child in the hospital and they're like, go be free. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? So I wanted to catch people at that end, right? Like now we've achieved freedom from those things. Now let's plant seeds and foundations, and let's create goals to move forward from this space. Now where do we go? Now that we've cleared that, now let's move into the future parts of your timeline where we're going to set goals, we're going to plant seeds, and we're going to move into an empowered space of being. And so I like to close out all of that with a quantum leap meditation, where we kind of like finally step into the person we're trying to be and then move from there. So yeah,
interesting.
that's my little intensive program.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very holistic because you include a lot of things that are in your I like to call magic toolbox to make it your own. And yeah, I also love how different modalities help you achieve the same thing, and you get to choose and find the one that works for you. And that's very interesting because you address traumas. Basically, it's traumas and limiting beliefs, and you can do that with timeline therapy, with EMDR, and all of that, and many more other modalities. So it's very interesting.
Yes, there's so many amazing modalities out there really to work with, and so many amazing practitioners too. And again, a lot of this could be worked through in the Akasha too. If you sat and had Akashic records readings and asked very specific questions, you would definitely be able to work through that and receive healing and release some of those belief systems too. So it just is kind of like, what space do you want to be in? What kind of support do you need? What kind of information, like what kind of learner are you too? My own experience in timeline therapy like blew my mind. I couldn't even believe how I thought like, oh yeah, this will be great. Let's do some release. I definitely could use this. You know, you catch yourself as a mother being triggered with children sometimes, or like, you know, little things, especially being in relationships, you can be triggered by other things. And so I thought, oh, well, you know, I could always use being, you know, less triggered, or, you know, getting rid of some of these like anger emotions or whatever. Sure, why not, you know? And dove into that, but I couldn't believe the depth of what I touched on in there. And I personally love the confidentiality side of it a bit, because talk therapy is not my jam. I don't feel like I grow, receive in that space. It just doesn't work for me. I feel like these modalities of healing kind of fill in that gap where the talk therapy is not quite touching that soul area that really needs that love and that tenderness and that healing brought to it. And I feel like in my time frame within timeline therapy, I was like, whoa, like if I had done that from day one, I probably could have saved myself a lot of time and heartache with other things. Like my face changed, the way I behaved changed. People were saying like, what did you do? Did you cut your hair? Did you lose weight? Like people were asking me like all of these questions. I was like, nope. You just seem more calm. You seem like more relaxed. What is there something you did? And I was like, timeline therapy. That's all I did. Like, and my girlfriend who went through it too, she was like, people thought I got a facelift. Like it was just wild. Like how much those emotions, you don't realize how much they drag you down and how much you carry from those root cause spaces, those stories that you told yourself then because it kept you safe then, right? Those stories allowed you to feel safe at the time, but they're no longer serving you. And so they're holding you back from being able to step into these new spaces, because safety still is in those previous reactions. It's not in these new responses. And so we kind of release that attachment to those reactive spaces so that you can respond, co-create, manifest the life that you're looking for, because you can't call in what you want if your nervous system is saying, oh, that's not safe. We can't do those things. And so the idea, I called it specifically, my program is called the field, because I feel like we're clearing out. I called it the field because I love my nature references. And so like, you know, you've got this field of greens and the flowers and everything growing, but the idea is to clear those energetic fields, clear those emotional fields, clear all of these areas that are carrying all the noise, so that you can call in what you actually want, not what has always been before. Picking out all those weeds and planting new seeds and letting
That's
them
such a
root,
clever
right?
name. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's very interesting to me. Yeah. And I think it's gonna be interesting to a lot of people. And I think we need to address something, because it's something that's personally bothering me, is and I tried to reframe that earlier. We get to choose what methodology will work for us, but it can get overwhelming to finding the right one for us. Do you have any advice for that?
So when it comes to choosing who I'm going to work with or what modalities call for me, it's a very intuitive process for me. I just have like this gut feeling, this gut calling, but I've also learned to kind of sit with it for a minute and like allow it to marinate a little. And if there was something calling me to it in the first place, I know that it'll be something that's helpful for me, but then I need to sit with, what do I hope to gain from that modality? What do I hope to see happen? And can that modality bring me closer to that space? And so that's kind of where I sit with it before I say yes to something. I used to just be that like yes person, like yes, I want to do it. Yes, I want to do it. And like jumping in. And I've learned to give myself more time to respond. And that if that modality is meant for me, it's always there, right? I can always reach out. I can always take opportunity, but to kind of sit with it a little bit and ask yourself why am I doing this? And what am I hoping to gain from it? And then with working with practitioners, then I want to make sure that the conversation that I have with them, or the discovery call, or the initial meeting with them, I want to make sure that that's what we're going to achieve. I want to make sure that I'm asking them the right questions, where I feel comfortable that my investment, because I ultimately see it as an investment in myself. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm investing my time into the person that's there. I don't really see the money as like, oh, it's going to them. I see that as it's coming back to me. But I see my time as being precious, and I want to make sure that the time I'm spending, that I'm receiving what is needed to grow. And so I think that's important, is to give space to that, because it's a relationship. When you invest in coaches, I see it as like a give and take, right? It's a relationship. I'm showing up, I want you to show up, and I want us to work together. And sometimes there's coaches that it doesn't jive. And I appreciate certain coaches that will say like, hey, let me refer you to this other person, because I actually think you'd be a better fit or a better match for this person. This may not be the right thing for you right now, but I'd love you to circle back. Or, maybe this doesn't fit exactly, but I know which modality will. Let me send you to this person. And so I think that it's just having that intuitive calling, and then using your discernment for whether or not it's for you, and then also feeling comfortable in the relationship you're creating with that coach in that space. Above all, I think that's super important, is to have that relationship where you feel comfortable, you feel seen, and you feel heard. Yeah, that safety factor for sure.
And again, it's coming back to something that I've been working through today. So it's interesting, because I was doing something for trauma, and ultimately I did not feel like safe enough, or so I stopped that modality. So that's it's important to just sometimes stop and really go within and see if it's bringing you, like you said, what you needed from it, and how, and supporting you also in the best way possible.
Yeah,
and we get to change our minds.
Yes, that's so important. It's so important, because we are told we can't change our minds, right? From a very young age. Like, you go to school, you pick the one thing you want to be when you grow up, and then you stick with that, and there's all of these ideas around like not being able to change our minds. But I personally feel that's one thing about me that triggers a lot of people is I change my mind all the time. Like I moved into an RV and I felt like it. And I went from a career being a massage therapist to a career being a wedding and events coordinator to a career being, the next thing, and then being a stay-at-home mom. And then, like I'm always changing my mind. And I love to encourage that in other people. Like change your mind all the time. Change your mind. Make new decisions. Yeah. Make new decisions, make new paths, do new things. Like, no, who's holding you to these standards of like not being able to change your mind? And as a coach too, I wouldn't want you sitting in my container and not be comfortable, not be happy with like change your mind, because I'd rather you get what you came looking for in the first place. And I don't take it personal because it's your journey, right? It's not my journey. And that's something I've learned over time too, is like it's not personal. It rarely ever is personal, like meaning like it's attacking you on the other end. It's always what the other person needs and wants and sees. And so it's rarely ever a direct attack on you, even though we feel that way. And as someone who changes their mind quite often, I don't worry if somebody else is offended by it either, because like I am allowed to change my mind. I'm allowed to do what I want to do. And so I honor that in other people. I enjoy that in other people. I like to see other people changing their minds. I like to see other people like, 360 it and just do something completely different. I'm like, yes, because you don't see that a lot, right? And it's not encouraged a lot, but I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Interesting. And is there anything you want to share, like a word of wisdom or something that you feel called to share?
I feel like we touched on so much.
A lot.
I'm just so excited to be here with you and talking with you today. It's really been such a blessing on my heart. You have no idea. I love it. I love connecting and talking with you. And I feel like you're such a magical person. Every time that I think of you, I just see like fairies and like all of this energy. It's just so pretty. And so I'm just glad that our paths have connected here in this space again. And we've been in another container together, but we didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to really sit and chat with each other and get to know each other. So it's been fun connecting here with you. As far as closing words of wisdom go, I feel like we just touched on so much. I've probably it's so funny. I'm kind of cracking up like in the back of my mind because I'm just like talking, and I normally am like more of a quiet, like more reserved person, and I'm like, wow, okay, we had a lot to say today about things.
And I'm sure we could go still for an hour or two.
Yeah, probably. But especially when it comes to spirituality, oh my gosh, let's talk. Let's have all the discussions. I love all the deep stuff that exists there. And I just feel like we've touched on so much today. And I hope that other people, as they're going through their spiritual journeys, they just like allow themselves the freedom to experience it the way they're experiencing it. And, just going back to what we just said, like change your mind about your life whenever you feel like it. I certainly did. And I'm better for it. For every time I changed my mind about something and kind of went in the opposite direction of where I was told we're supposed to go, or told, this is how you do it. My children are all home water births, and that was not normal to do, especially with my son almost 13 years ago. It was very unheard of at that time. But, my children are born at home and water births, and we homeschool, and we live in an RV, and we do spiritual things. Like everything I do is pretty much the opposite of what society tells you to do. And so I love to see other people embrace that. Like change your mind, carve your own path, create your own stories, write your own words of wisdom, and don't look back. Don't let other people tell you that it has to be a certain way. And I think that is what living with no regrets looks like, is just following that calling on your own soul, on your own heart, and letting everything else fall away,
Of course.
because you have a really cool story to write too, if you just embrace it and stop living out other people's stories.
Yeah. And it's okay if your story or your way of living is, like you said, a house with lots of things. Just make sure it is.
Yeah, like if your story is being a millionaire, like more power to you, like get all the things, do all the things. If your story is being in a little cottage growing flowers, like do it. You know, there's no guidelines or no rules or no, like let go of all of those expectations, because you know there's guilt and shame around both of those examples I just gave, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And there shouldn't be. Your life is your life. You're free to do what you want to do, and you're free to be who you want to be, and do it. Right? Like,
and I just want to say
mind.
something that came when you were speaking of changing your mind, is the word scary came on, you know, like, is it scarier to stay where you are and not change, or to change, like for the better, maybe, you know?
Yeah, it's so
What's the
true.
best thing?
There is, like, I've learned to kind of hold hands with fear and walk together, and it's changed a lot for me. Is that the fear never goes away. It doesn't go away if you stay where you are, and it doesn't go away if you step into new things. The fear does not go away. And so you have to learn to just kind of lean into it, be friends with it, and say, okay, well, we're going to go together on this. Like, it's cool you're hanging out, but we're going to go together. We're going to hold hands. We're just going to go. And that's the thing, is if you push past that fear point, you'll realize that, like you said, where you were staying, the fear was stronger there because it was meant to keep you where you are. And when you push past that, you realize how it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And, you know, our subconscious, our animal mind exists to keep us safe. That's what it's there for, right? It's there to say, this is our experience. That was not good. So now we're going to just categorize that bad. We're never going to do that again. Like, and so then you shy away from certain things because of these stories, because your brain's like this operating system, right? And so reboot it, write new programs, change that thought process. Like, that's part of what timeline therapy does too. But push past those, like, what would they be, like firewalls? We're talking about operating systems. When you get to the other side and look backwards, you'll realize it really, you know, you thought the flames were this high and they were really like just an inch, and you just had to make that little leap.
And the interesting thing with fear, in my perspective, is like, maybe taking the decision or making the shift is scary, but once you have decided, the fear kind of melts away, because you know you'll get there and you have made up your mind. And if anyone needed to hear that, make the decision and you'll be relieved.
Yes. Well, and those, like, the energetics, right, of fear and excitement, they kind of fit in that same space. And so it's also kind of a little bit of rewiring as well, as like, is this fear, or am I just really excited to jump into this new space, but the old me is still clinging to these other things? And so I've kind of played with that in my mind well, is like, am I afraid, or am I just really excited? And I'm equating that same energy with fear. And can I lean into that excitement? Can I lean more into the energy of, like, let's transition, even if it is fear, let's transition into that same energy, but let's make it excited. And that has made all the difference. It's like, sometimes, you know, if you go back to even animalistic days and more caveman settings, right, it was safer to be in that cave, but look at all of the beautiful things that they experienced when they stepped out of the cave and started exploring and started hunting and gathering and creating and doing all of the things. So don't stay in the caves.
Thank you so much for your time and that chat. It was amazing. And I know we got a lot from it and a lot to think about and maybe rewiring a little bit of ways of seeing our ways of thinking. So thank you for that. It's much appreciated.
So.
And
Thank
so
you.
if anyone wants to find you, I will link your Instagram, and you offer Akashic record readings and their field, and maybe some other sort of things in the future, I think.
Yes. There will be many more things unfolding, especially next year. Lots of fun stuff to come.
Ooh.
So yes.
Can't wait. So yeah, thank you so much. And I will catch you listeners soon with another episode, which will be something I don't know about yet. So yeah, see you soon. Have a great day and bye.